Welcome to 5 Minutes French Grammar Fixes. Bienvenue à 5 Minutes French Grammar Fixes. Today, the perfect tense, part 2. Aujourd'hui, le passé composé, deuxième partie. In 5 Minutes French Grammar Fixes, perfect tense part 1, you learned that when changing a verb into the past tense, all you had to do was to use the relevant part of the verb avoir, to have, in the present tense, followed by a verb ending in e accent, or I, or you, that is, if the verb is irregular. However, see what happens here when you want to say I went. So you can see there are still two parts to my verb, and my second part is ending in e accent, which is normal considering I'm using the verb aller, which ends in er. And I do know er changes to e accent. But I do not have j'ai in front of it. I have je suis, which I know is my verb to be in the present tense. So why is that? Well, there is a whole list of French verbs which use the verb to be, être, in the present tense as their first part instead of a verb to have, avoir. These verbs are usually to do with movement, and you can remember them with the phrase Dr. and Mrs. Van der Tramp. Each letter in this phrase is the first letter of a verb that uses être, to be, as their first part of, in the past tense. Now, the pattern that I need to remember for these movement verbs, when I put them in the past tense, is this one. The verb to be in the present tense, je suis, tu es, il est, etc. And the verb ending in either e accent, I, or you. And I must also remember that some of these verbs have an irregular past participle. The past participle is your second part of the verb in the past tense. For example, venir or devenir, revenir, they all change into venu, devenu, revenu. Something that happens to the past participle when you are using the verb être as your first part, and it's something that you don't hear when you say the word, but it's something that you do see. And this is the past participle having to agree with a subject. Whenever you use the verb être, the past participle that follows might have to get an extra e or an extra s, depending if the subject of your verb is feminine, singular, or plural. So if your subject is feminine, your past participle will have an extra e. If your subject is feminine plural, it will have an extra e for the feminine and an extra s for the plural. And same thing applies if your subject is masculine plural, as in ils sont partis, they left. You have to add an extra s at the end of parti, but you don't hear it. Remember, most of the time, the s at the end of a word is not sounded. Your past sentence is in the negative form. You need to be careful about where you put your negative words, such as ne pas, ne plus, ne que, etc. So notice what happens in those two sentences. Je suis allée au Canada. I went to Canada. And je ne suis pas allée au Canada. I did not go to Canada. So basically, your ne pas is going around the first part of the past tense, the suis, the être part, just like you did with the verb avoir. I was going around the avoir part of the verb. There is a particular kind of verb which also uses être as their first part when in the perfect tense, and that is reflexive verbs. This is quite tricky, and if you have just started using the past tense in French, do not worry about it for the time being. You can go back to this at a later stage. So first of all, what is a reflexive verb? A reflexive verb is a verb that always has se in front of its infinitive. For example, if you look up the verb to get up, you'll find it in the dictionary as se lever. And depending on the subject of the verb, this se changes whatever tense you're using. So the table here shows you how it goes in the present tense. In the past tense, in the passé composé, that little green word, me, te, se, etc., stays in front of the two parts of your verb, that is in the past tense. And this is how it goes. Je me suis amusée, tu t'es amusé, etc. So there we are. This is more or less it for the past tense in French. And if you need to refresh your memory on the basic rule for changing most verbs into the past tense, check 5 minutes French grammar fixes, perfect tense part 1.